Hello, Violas. We are going to be working today on page 26 of Essential Elements, Book 2, and we are learning a new time signature today. Time signature and meter mean the same thing. Those are synonyms. So if I say meter, that's the same thing as the time signature. Now, in a time signature, you have probably learned that the top number, it tells you how many beats are in a measure, and then the bottom number is interpreted kind of like a fraction. It tells you what the value of the note is. So if the bottom number is 4, that means quarter note. Quarter is a fourth. If the bottom note is an eighth, that stands for eighth note, and the time signature 6/8 is very, very common. And it just basically means 6/8 notes in a measure. Now, generally when you're playing in 6/8, if the tempo is very slow, you're going to perceive all 6 of those beats. But if the tempo is quicker, which is often the case, you're going to perceive 2 beats. And each of those beats will be subdivided into 3/8 notes. So the feel of 6/8 is very different than the feel of 3/4, even though they have an equivalent number of eighth notes or quarter notes in them. The feel of 6/8 would emphasize the beat 1 and beat 4, and so what would be perceived as a beat in a faster tempo is actually the dotted quarter note. Now, you cannot quantify a dotted note as a fraction, so that is why we have to put the 8 in the time signature. And you're going to always in 6/8 see the eighth notes beamed into groups of 3. So one group of 3 in the first half of the measure, another group of 3 in the second half of the measure, and we would count that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now in a slower tempo it might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but you're always going to put a strong emphasis in the middle of the measure on the 4th eighth note. So let's go ahead and try that with number 115, rhythm rap. You'll notice that the eighth notes are beamed in groups of 3, and that the measures that don't have eighth notes are either dotted quarter note, which would be perceived as a half of a measure, and the dotted half note is a whole measure in 6/8. We're going to play number 115, rhythm rap, on our open D string. Now let's go ahead and apply that rhythm with some notes for number 116, Lazy Day. Now, when you're playing in 6/8, another very common rhythmic device is a quarter note followed by an eighth note, which is on one half of the measure. And often when you play those, you'll play them hooked. So they'll be moving the bow in the same direction, but with a stop of the bow in between them. That's going to look like this. Now that's similar to the dotted eighth and 16th note figures that we learned previously, but if it's a dotted 8th 16th note figure, it's going to have a subdivision of 4 16th notes. So that would sound like this. Whereas with the 6/8, it's going to have a little bit more of a rolling feel, a little bit more relaxed. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So just make sure that you're really differentiating between those two rhythms, because they do sound somewhat similar, and often when we encounter those rhythms, it's easy to kind of mess up and play the wrong one. So always make sure that it's got that kind of nice rolling, relaxed feel when it's in 6/8 with quarter note and an eighth note. And anytime you have the dotted rhythms with dotted 8th and 16th notes, it's going to be a little bit more crisp sounding. Here we go. Number 117, hooked on 6/8. Okay, now next we're going to play a round round, row, row, row your boat. This one is one that you've probably sung in a round before. It's a 4-part round, and so when we play a round, we have one person or section will start, and then another section will come in after a couple of measures, and we're just all playing the same song, but we're just starting at different times. So let's go ahead and first time through, I'll just play the melody on viola alone, so you can hear it and see it, and then we'll go ahead and do a round with our other friends in the orchestra. Okay, now here is row, row, row your boat in a round, first at the same tempo as on the recording and then faster. Next, we're going to go ahead and play exercise 119, slurring in 6/8 time. So remember, when you have a slur and there are not staccato dots on those notes, you just keep the bow moving between the notes. So just keep it nice and smooth, and then let your fingers do their work to change the notes. Finally, we're going to do number 120, Jolly Good Fellow. This one has some hooks and some slurs, so just really watch out for the articulation on this one. And mostly it's a stepwise motion going up and down the D major scale. For page 26. I hope that you have enjoyed playing these songs in 6/8. All of the songs on page 26 are at a slower tempo, and when we move to page 27, we will play some more upbeat, quicker tempo 6/8 pieces where you actually will feel 2 beats in a measure instead of 6. So 6/8 meter is very, very common, and there are a lot of pieces that really just have to be written in a meter like 6/8 just because of the rhythmic feel of the piece. So it's sometimes a little bit tricky when we first start doing it, but once you get used to it, it's going to be no big deal at all and a lot of fun to play. So good luck and happy practicing.